In 2023, Dior was still riding the crest of a period of rapid expansion. But in 2024, the picture suddenly changed. LVMH does not disclose complete results for Dior's fashion business on a standalone basis. Financial analysts, however, estimate that Dior's fashion sales fell by roughly 8 to 10% in 2024. Then, in 2025, organic revenue at LVMH's fashion and leather goods business group declined by another 5%, while profit from recurring operations fell by 13%. Outside estimates suggest that Dior itself was still declining at a high single-digit rate. This was a machine that had grown at high speed for years, losing momentum for 2 years in a row. Customers were beginning to question relentless price increases. Demand was weakening in important markets such as China. Popular logos and handbags were also losing their novelty because they had become so ubiquitous. At that moment, Dior made a decision it had not made in nearly 70 years. In 2025, Jonathan Anderson took charge of Dior's haute couture, womenswear, and menswear. The 3 most important fashion lines were all placed in the hands of one person. The last time all 3 had been led by one person was when Christian Dior died in 1957. That is why this is such a major gamble. Anderson had successfully reinvented Loewe, but he had never managed a creative machine on Dior's scale. He would have to deliver roughly 10 collections a year. If his conceptual approach failed to translate into products, the risk would not be confined to menswear or womenswear. It would affect Dior's entire fashion image. To understand why Dior was willing to take that risk, we need to return to 1947. That year, another man changed the fashion world with a single collection. His name was Christian Dior. Christian Dior was born in Normandy, France, in 1905. He ran an art gallery in his early years, but after his family lost its fortune, he began earning a living by selling fashion sketches. He later worked for the fashion houses of Robert Piguet and Lucien Lelong. Paris was still suffering from shortages after the Second World War. Wartime clothing had emphasized economy, durability, and practicality. Skirts were shorter, fabric was rationed, and women's silhouettes were enclosed in lines that often resembled military uniforms. But textile magnate Marcel Boussac believed that, after the war, people would want more than survival. They would long for beauty again. He financed Christian Dior, who established his own fashion house at 30 Avenue Montaigne in Paris. It was not a conservative investment. Europe was still rebuilding in 1946. Fabric remained precious, and haute couture served only a tiny group of wealthy clients. No one could be certain whether lavish clothing represented recovery or merely waste at the worst possible moment. On the 12th of February 1947, Christian Dior presented his first collection. Models entered the salon with rounded shoulders, tightly cinched waists, and long, full skirts that required extravagant quantities of fabric. The silhouettes were the complete opposite of the spare, straight clothing of the war years. After seeing the collection, Harper's Bazaar editor-in-chief Carmel Snow declared that Dior had created a completely new look. From that moment, the new look became the collection's most famous name. Some people saw it as a symbol of Paris rising again. Others were furious. Rationing had not completely ended, so how could anyone use so much fabric for a single skirt? But the controversy did not diminish its impact. It made the whole world aware of Dior. Christian Dior's true achievement was not simply designing beautiful clothes. He understood the emotion of an era. After years of war and deprivation, people wanted more than new garments. They wanted a symbol proving that life could become magnificent again. Haute couture, however, has a built-in limitation. Every garment demands extensive handwork and repeated fittings. While the number of clients is extremely small, gowns made for a Paris salon could not, by themselves, sustain a truly global brand. So Dior did 2 important things very early. First, it extended the dream into more products. In 1947, Miss Dior perfume appeared alongside the first fashion collection. People who could not afford haute couture could still buy a bottle of fragrance and take home a small part of Dior's world. Second, Dior built a licensing system. Working with business partners, the company extended its name to stockings, jewelry, swimwear, neckties, and other products, while controlling licenses overseas. This became the basic formula of the modern luxury industry. The most expensive haute couture creates the dream, while handbags, perfume, and accessories sell that dream to a much larger market. Dior was no longer merely a dressmaker's surname. It had become a commercial system capable of crossing borders, product categories, and price levels. In 1957, Christian Dior died suddenly of a heart attack in Italy. He had led the fashion house that bore his name for only about 11 years. The most dangerous question appeared immediately. If all the brand's value came from the founder's genius, what would remain once the founder was gone? His successor was Yves Saint Laurent, who was only 21 years old. He became the youngest haute couture designer in the world and used a lighter trapeze silhouette to prove that Dior could change without merely copying its founder. After him, different designers reinterpreted Dior in entirely different creative languages. That created the central paradox of every luxury brand. If it never changes, it becomes a museum. But if it changes too much, it may lose the identity attached to its own name. By the 1980s, the Boussac Group, which owned Dior, was in a severe crisis. Most people saw losses, debt, and a sprawling company in need of restructuring. But one 35-year-old businessman saw Dior hidden in the ruins. His name was Bernard Arnault. In 1984, Arnault and a group of investors acquired Boussac. He restructured its assets but kept Dior at the center. He later prevailed in the struggle for control of LVMH and gradually built the global luxury empire we know today. The deal revealed an important truth. Factories grow old, inventory becomes obsolete, distribution networks can lose money. But a brand remembered around the world can continue creating value across different companies, different designers, and even different generations. For Arnault, Dior was not an ordinary asset. It was the first cornerstone of an empire built on the idea that cultural memory could also become long-term capital. Within LVMH, Dior was pushed back onto the global stage. John Galliano turned fashion shows into theater and restored attention to the brand through extravagant imagination. But Dior dismissed him in 2011 after he made anti-Semitic remarks in public. His fall demonstrated that a designer could create brilliance for a brand and become a liability almost overnight. In 2016, Maria Grazia Chiuri became Dior's first female creative director. She revived the Dior oblique motif and introduced the Dior book tote, combining womenswear, feminist messages, celebrity culture, and social media to help Dior expand rapidly. But growth itself creates problems. When a logo appears on more and more products, when popular handbags are copied everywhere, and when prices rise faster than the value customers believe they are receiving, a brand may become more famous without becoming more desirable. By 2025, demand for luxury goods was slowing. Dior needed more than another best-selling handbag. It needed a brand language capable of persuading customers all over again. Jonathan Anderson was born in Northern Ireland. As a young man, he originally wanted to become an actor, but fell in love with costume while studying performance. He worked at Prada and founded J.W. Anderson in 2008. His early business even came close to failure. The real turning point came in 2013. LVMH invested in his label and put him in charge of the Spanish leather goods house Loewe. At the time, Loewe had a long history and exceptional craftsmanship, but lacked a distinctive image capable of attracting a new generation around the world. Anderson did not abandon craftsmanship. Instead, he made craft strange, playful, photogenic, discussable, and collectible. He brought art, ceramics, gender, popular culture, and leatherworking into the same brand universe. He also proved that conceptual design could be translated into a business built on handbags and accessories. His 11 years of results at Loewe persuaded Dior chairman and chief executive officer Delphine Arnault to place an even larger bet on him. But success at Loewe could not simply be copied at Dior. Loewe could reinvent itself through a small number of unusual products and a striking image. Dior, by contrast, has to serve haute couture clients, ready-to-wear customers around the world, the menswear market, celebrity red carpets, and a vast accessories business all at once. Its scale is larger, its history weighs more heavily, and every change risks alienating existing customers. In 2025, Anderson first took over menswear, then added womenswear and haute couture. He became the first person to assume the combined responsibilities previously held by Maria Grazia Chiuri and Kim Jones. Instead of allowing different designers to speak in different voices, Dior asked one person to establish a common direction across all its major fashion collections. Anderson did not choose the safest route after taking over. He returned to Christian Dior himself instead of merely copying the popular products left by previous designers. He studied the founder's love of gardens, Lucky Charms, 18th century decoration, and the bar jacket, then took those elements apart and recombined them. His menswear mixed classical tailcoats with denim and everyday outerwear. His women's wear featured shortened bar jackets, dramatically inflated coats, and pronounced hip silhouettes. His haute couture used pleating, knots, floral embroidery, and sculptural construction to transform flat fabric into three-dimensional works. These designs are not guaranteed to please everyone. What Anderson is truly testing is whether Dior can stop depending on formulas. Can menswear, women's wear, couture, handbags, and celebrity dressing all look as though they belong to the same world? Can Dior adjust the prices and entry points of certain products without surrendering its sense of scarcity? Anderson has spoken publicly not about the next season, but about the Dior of 5 years from now. That statement also reveals the pressure he faces. A designer can create attention quickly, but building a brand language that will not be discarded by the next trend takes much longer. For now, the earliest commercial signals are positive. In its results for the first half of 2026, LVMH said that the success of Jonathan Anderson's first designs for Dior was one of the factors behind the group's faster growth in the second quarter. Fashion publications have also begun using the phrase "Dior is back" to describe some of the new collections. But we cannot yet declare the transformation a success. LVMH does not disclose complete revenue for Dior on a standalone basis. The new products have been in stores for only a short time. Red carpet exposure and applause at fashion shows do not necessarily translate into long-term repeat purchases. The real test is whether Anderson can create a product on the level of the Lady Dior, whether he can persuade customers to pay full price, and whether he can restore the balance between creativity, quality, and scale.